was taller, I wouldn't have to bend that thing down. But anyway, you know, I want to correct a little thing on this brochure. I didn't come to Kings Park as an orphan. I came as half an orphan because my mother had passed away, and my father took a leave of absence. In those days, you know, that was, so we never seen my father. So the two sisters and 5 brothers were scattered out amongst the family, you know, relatives. And I was fortunate. I came to Kings Park. I lived with my aunt and uncle, Pat and Mary, right across from the RJO school. And then when St. Joseph's school opened up, the Catholic school, I had you know, in the lower grades, you had to wear a big bow, and you had knickers, and all of these guys from the school here, of RJO, they would see me going to school, and I'd have to, you know, you always felt embarrassed because you're like a sissy. So anyway, after that, then when I graduated from St. Joseph's, I went to Kings Park High, and I stayed there for 2.5 years. And it was a great experience. I tell you, the school was everything. You know, remember that program, Cheers? It's a place where everybody knows your name. Now, we didn't know everybody by the cars because now everybody's got a car. Mom, Dad, and 5 kids. But in those days, the only one that had a car was Dad. So if you know if the car was parked up in the village by Tony's, you know Dad was in there walking up. So anyway, that's the way it was in the old days. It was good. It was personal and everything else. And then one of the subjects I took up in the high school was typing, or Mishnah. And at the time it didn't mean anything, but down the road it meant a lot to me by filling in when situations arose. So in the Army, we were preparing to go to the Pacific, and I was down in Orlando, and we were getting the equipment ready, because it was an 841st Engineer Aviation Battalion. In those days, the Air Force was part of the Army. It wasn't an individual plane. But anyway, we would put cosmoline and oil on all of the equipment and that. And the supply sergeant comes out and says, "Anybody here can type?" I ran up to him, hugged him. You don't hug sergeants too often. But anyway, that was the start of my career with the typewriter. And down the road, it filled in. After the war, I took my high school equivalency because like I said, I dropped out and I went to work in a hospital as a page in the main office. You know, when my aunt and uncle had a son of their own, and the thing was with them, their son was first. I was also ran. But they weren't mean or anything. It's just that you had to make your own way. So when the opening came up for that job down in the hospital, I took it. It was $30 a month and room and board. How could you beat that? With all those unfortunate people that we were taking care of. But anyway, that was the beginning of my hospital thing. And then when the war started, I went to the Army for 3 years, and then we had 90 days to go back to work in the hospital. And at that time, construction was big. And they were doing a lot of work around the hospital and all of that. And they had these Portuguese guys, I don't know, I think they call Mexicans today. And they were building all of the stuff down there. And I said, "Hey, this is big money now. I'm not going to go back to that hospital for $54 a month." Well, I tell you, when the 89th day came, I went down to the hospital and says, "Take me back." And I'd like to go back to the hospital now, only as a patient. But anyway, this is quite an honor. And I got to thank my friend over there, Leo. He's Jesse Ventura's cousin. But anyway, so that's the way they go. I love Kings Park. It's been good to me. And you know, in the old days, you never mentioned if Kings Park, you came to Kings Park. You came from Smithtown. My cousin John, who I lived with, when he got married, it was in the paper, the Smithtown News, and that's your paper. Right? You got so many, I don't know where the hell you're at. But anyway, it was in there, John King of Smithtown. You know, now it's the affluent section of Kings Park is part of Smithtown. You know, now it's something else. And because in the old days, Kings Park was Looney Tunes, you know, down the road here to the hospital. Not to disrespect anybody, but I think everybody had somebody in the closet, because all the old timers from overseas and that came here, the only social life they had was drinking, and that was the way of life with everybody. But anyway, it was great, and like I say, that was my life, and I enjoyed it. And leaving the hospital and that, and then I worked for OTB. And that was 13 years of betting over there in comic, you know. That's comic with two N's. A lot of people say Comac. I don't know where that is. But anyway, that's my life. I enjoyed it every minute of it. And I got to thank Leo for getting me. 7 years ago, I had the humanitarian war with the Chamber of Commerce. And naturally, he was the one that sponsored it. So overall, my life has been great. I got a nice family, a son and 2 grandchildren, and a nice daughter-in-law. That's you. But everything is great. I'm so happy. I'm so happy to be here. I'm glad. Thank you, Leo, again for doing that. And I thank all the friends who came. And thank you.
One more, don't go in there.
Okay. Thank you.
Matty O.
Okay, thank you, Chief.
Our next honoree tonight. It's difficult to get the politicians in Smithtown to agree on anything, except for one thing. This guy is a royal pain in the tuchus. The reason why is because he's a hard-hitting investigative journalist who runs a small-town newspaper at a time when it's very difficult for newspapers to make it. In many ways, not many ways, he's the editor, he's the publisher, he's a reporter, he's a photographer. I think I even seen him cleaning the office a time or two. And that's because the door's always open. Want to talk to David, all you have to do is just go down the end of Edgewood Avenue and walk into the doors, and David's sitting at his desk typing away. His newspaper covers community events, investigative journalism, but some of the favorite parts that I like in the newspaper is a few years back they did a series of articles on the psychiatric center, and it was spread over many weeks, and it's just absolutely fantastic, and it's something that we keep in the Heritage Museum to this day as part of our archive materials. And in depth, where it is, what it is now, and where it's going. Another series of articles David's newspaper did was on the downtowns of Smithtown, the 4 downtowns, Kings Park, Smithtown, St. James, and Comac. And even though